Hello and welcome to this webinar all about acquisitions and mergers, where we're going to be speaking to Esther, Rob, Michael and Sarah about their experiences of both buying and selling. So hello guys.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Hello guys. So let's get started with your questions. So hello to those of you that didn't just see me say hello a moment ago, and welcome to this acquisitions and mergers webinar. We're going to be talking about all things buying and selling accountancy practices. And we have 4 people in the room. We've got Sarah, Michael, Rob and Esther, who are going to be sharing their experiences of buying and selling their practices and buying other practices and merging and combining and all the rest of it. As always, if you've got any questions as we go through, please pop them in the Q&A box. We love stupid questions. Well, I certainly love stupid questions. Stupid questions are easy to answer. So don't be afraid if you've got something that you are unsure of. Please pop it in the Q&A box and I will gladly answer those questions or ask those questions of the panelists as we go through. I also have a whole deck of questions that people have preloaded for me. Predominantly, it was around selling practices rather than buying practices. It's about a 2/3, 1/3 split. So we're going to begin today's session talking about selling accountancy practices, and then there's a bit of a crossover, and then we're going to move on to buying practices as well. So if I could have Rob, Esther, Sarah, and Michael with your cameras on, that would be great. We say hello and good morning, and perhaps we could start with, I'll just give a bit of a summary. Esther and Rob are going to do some talking to start with, because Esther and Rob have both sold practices, and then Michael, Sarah and Rob have all bought practices, so Rob's got a double role in today's session. We're going to talk to them, but there's, as I say, there's a bit of crossover, so we'll mix through. So in order to kick us started, could you just give us a bit of background about who you are, whereabouts in the country you are, and what it was that you did? So Esther, if you could share for me first, please.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Esther. I'm in Surrey. I started my practice in 2012 and I sold it in 2023.
Excellent. Thank you. And Michael?
I'm Michael Wells. I am on the Derbyshire-Staffordshire border. I have acquired 2 practices. I set up in 2018, acquired 2 practices along their book of fees and then a practice, and been growing organically.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. And Robert?
Hi, good morning. My name's Rob. I'm based in Manchester. I set up the first firm in 1999, sold that to a national in 2007, set up the second firm 2010, sold part of that and have bought 13 times.
Blimey, Rob, so there's a lot of buying experience in 13 times. Let's hope the 13th was lucky rather than unlucky. And then Sarah, your background, please.
Yeah, hi. I'm also based in Surrey. I set up my practice in 2006 and I bought another practice slightly smaller than I was towards the end of 2022.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's kick off with some questions then. So the first question was asked by quite a few people was, how long was the process? And is there anything that you could do to make it go faster? So specifically around selling. So this is for Esther and Rob. How long was the process of selling? And was there anything that you feel with the benefit of hindsight that you can make it go faster? And I could also obviously go to Michael and Sarah and ask from their perspective, is there anything that the seller could make go faster? But Esther, how do you feel about that? How long was the process for you? And was there anything that you think you could do to make it go faster?
I think my process felt very quick. I think I appointed a broker sort of late spring last year and we completed in October. So I think it flew, once you've had your initial meetings and you've met with prospectives, the guys I chose to sell to, I think those conversations happened in July, and then August was the due diligence. And yeah, it was the end of September, early October we completed. So I think it was really fast. So I don't think I'd speed it up. I think it was perfect.
Excellent. So it was about 3 months, was it, from offer to completion?
Yes.
And that felt about right for you from the point of view of all the stuff that was going on and whatnot in order to get the sale through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that was about right. That was perfect. Because the due diligence, from a seller's point of view, takes a lot of work. So trying to fit that in, and you're still running the business, of course.
Brilliant, thank you. And you mentioned that you used a broker in that answer, and I've got another question coming up in a minute about the broker.
Okay.
So I'll come back to you on that if I may. Rob, how was the process for you, or how long is the processes for you? And is there anything that you think that the buyer or the seller, because you can be on both sides of the equation, could do to make it go faster?
And I had two very different experiences on selling. The branch office that I sold as part of this version was very similar to Esther's, about 3 months start to finish. Again, I used a broker, and I would suggest using brokers. There's some good and bad ones, obviously. Not going to put names out, but they tend to prepare both sides better for the deal. The large part of the practice, or the full practice, I sold 2007 to a national. I didn't use a broker. I actually responded to an advert in Accountancy Age that they put out. It took nearly 18 months to get that one through. A, it was dealing with the national. The due diligence process was a lot longer, but B, I don't think I was quite as prepared as I could have been.
Excellent. So you're in favour of a broker, and we'll come
Yes.
back. We'll perhaps expand on that in a little bit more. Your longest is 18 months.
Yes.
From a sale perspective, and what is it more typically? Do you think? Did you say 3 to 4? Did you say
3 to 4 was the other part that I sold, and certainly when I'm a buyer, it tends to be 3 to 4 months.
Excellent, thank you. And then Michael, from the point of view of when you bought, how long was that process for you?
Yes, that 3 to 4. The first one, I think I sort of met with the guy in the December, and it was the March when we completed, and then the second one was the September through to the December. So pretty much around that, and that was also through a broker with both of them.
Thank you. And if from a buyer's perspective, was there anything that the seller could have done to make it go faster for you, or was you comfortable with the 3 to 4 months, or?
Yes, yeah, it seemed comfortable enough, because obviously to do the due diligence and get all the information together and sort of get ready for it, that is sufficient time. Yeah.
Excellent. And Sarah, what was your experience when you bought? Is that the same sort of timescale for you, or did you have a different experience?
Well, so I was trying to buy another practice first, and we'd almost got to, it must have been 10 months, 11 months. I ended up pulling out, and it took just forever. It seemed to just drag on. And that was one of the reasons for pulling out in the end. And then at the same time, I came across another one. So I actually pulled out of one, went straight into another one. That one took about 4 months. And that's typical. That was a good, I'd say that's a decent amount of time to do due diligence, and also not to kind of, the process doesn't start to wane.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. I don't know, because we sell within Greenstones. We've got a little bit of a corporate finance. We buy and sell a few businesses for customers and non-customers, and that bit from where the heads of terms are agreed or the deal's agreed to completion, the longer that is, the more likely somebody's going to get cold feet and lose their mind, or provide too much detail, or ask loads of questions that are not particularly relevant. So I'm all for shrinking it down as quickly as possible. Thank you, Sarah. So let's just move on to the broker. How do you feel about a broker, Esther? You chose to use a broker when you sold. Just give us the reasons why you chose that and how you found that experience.
Yeah, I mean, my reasons for using a broker was because I didn't know who might be buying, and I didn't know what I was doing. So the broker to me was so useful, because he spoke me through the whole process. Anytime I had questions, he was great. He was more than happy to speak to me, outside office hours, because at that point I hadn't told the team. So he sort of held my hand through the whole process. So I found that completely invaluable. And even to the point where we would do the heads of terms and the contracts, it was all completely new to me. So that was my reasoning really for wanting to go there. Plus, he connected me with people who wanted to buy. I wouldn't have known how to go out there to find purchasers. I could have obviously looked in your group or put an advert online, but then you don't know if you've got people who are serious. And I think with a broker, you've got serious contenders.
Brilliant, excellent. Thank you, Esther. And Rob, do you just want to expand on what you shared earlier about broker? Obviously, you've got broker stories from both sides, and the good, the bad, the ugly, and the brokers as well. So, just what do you want to share around that?
The good brokers will guide you through the process, and certainly if you're a buyer, they will have briefed the seller And I think that's equally as important as briefing the buyers on this. Some of the sellers that I have dealt with who have not used brokers have absolutely unrealistic expectations of what to expect from the process, from the price, from what you're going to do, how you're going to integrate it. And to have had that third-party discipline imposed on them to say, look, this is how deals work, I think is invaluable. And I know it's the buyer that tends to end up paying for that broker privilege, but the deals tend to work smoother. There's less goes wrong in them. They're more likely to complete. I'm in favor of it. And yes, some brokers are better than others. I've used a number of them, but I am still generally in favor of them.
So from a seller's perspective, you think it helps them get more value for their business, or it makes
the process smoother.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think they will get a higher price or higher multiple, but I think they're more likely to complete a deal.
So it's more emotional comforting for them, more emotional stable for them.
Yeah,
there's a bit of support
emotionally stable. Realistic expectations. As I say, I'd come back to this. You know, as anybody else who's followed you and this thing for a while knows, I like direct mail. And, you know, when I first started buying up firms, I did loads of direct mail. Hello, I'd like to buy your firm. And I'd get people coming in expecting I've got £50,000 of fees and I want £1 million for it because that's what I need to retire with. And you're kind of like, well, yeah, I want 20 million for mine, but it's not going to happen.
That's right. Yeah.
And
one and a half times
has dealt with that process before you get there, and it just makes it easier.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, they start with the 1.5 times fees, no clawback, and all the money on day one type.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. And Michael, have you found it from the other way around when you're buying? Did you use a broker, or did the seller use a broker, or?
So yes, well, the seller used the broker, who then obviously I registered with the broker that I was interested in buying practices. So it was two different brokers that I was registered with. So both of them came from two different brokers. But yes, both of them, it was invaluable actually having the broker there. Also, if there was some queries with regards to the due diligence and you're not quite sort of getting the right answers, you can then actually use that broker as the third party, as the intermediary to then have that discussion with the seller. So yes, from my point of view, I wouldn't know any other way of doing it really.
Excellent, thank you. And Sarah, what was your experience like with a broker? Did you have a broker?
Yeah, there was two different brokers. So for the business that I didn't end up buying, and then the business I did buy, they were really useful at the beginning before I'd even offered, as in they took me through the process, showed me gave me some heads of terms examples and things like that. Probably as I got more into the process in buying, I didn't use them as much as I did, or I could have done. But we had quite a good dialogue with, well, both sellers for most of the period that I was trying to buy the first one. And the second one, everything was quite direct and we were, on the kind of the same wavelength. So, but definitely recommend using a broker. The only thing that hurts is the fee.
Yeah. So in your scenario, Sarah, the seller had instructed the broker, but the broker, did they advise you on heads of terms and things like that, or did they just give you examples of it?
So when I first registered with brokers, that's when I had a good conversation with one of the brokers. Actually, it ended up being the second broker that I did buy through. He was the person that I had a really good conversation with, talked me through the process, heads of terms, gave me the examples, Word documents, what they would be. We did use a solicitor for the actual process, but the initial heads of terms, just to get an idea of kind of what you're talking about. And so that was before I'd even offered on anything or had decided to offer on anything.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. We got some questions that have come in, so this is the exciting bit, because none of this, I don't know what these questions are going to be until I read about, so we'll see where it goes. We've got a few questions around the due diligence aspect of it. So Kelpish has asked, what due diligence checks can be done? So what due diligence checks happened as you was going through the process? So let's start with Sarah and mix it up a little bit. So Sarah, when you did did you do any due diligence, or what due diligence did you do? That's difficult to say on a Tuesday morning. I'm not even able to last night. So
I mean, initial is you get the financials, the P&L, balance sheet, etc. The due diligence process, I had a view of all of their clients. This was after we'd gone to heads of terms and got past that stage. So at that point, I could see all of the clients. And I picked a handful of those clients and literally went through the working papers, the files, sat down with the seller. They talked me through. We had a master spreadsheet with all of kind of the last fees that had been sold, and I checked some of those against the invoices. And that was probably the lease where I checked the property lease, looked at some payroll records for the firm, and I'm probably forgetting loads of stuff that I did because it seems ages ago now, but those were the main things to get comfortable.
Excellent, thank you. And Michael, when you bought, from a buying perspective, what sort of due diligence did you do?
Pretty much the same as Sarah's mentioned there. A few things to add there was because there were staff that were being 2P'd across to me, so getting the employment contracts and understanding how long they'd been with the firm, what the holiday policy was, etc., whether there'd been any long-term sickness, any sort of issues with regards to any of the employees. And then also, I managed to get a list of questions that was actually not from the brokers that I used, but one of the other brokers. I found it on their website for due diligence. So I sort of went through that, and it's asking about the run-off professional indemnity cover and such like. So that was useful with just sort of sending that through to them.
Excellent, thank you. And with the benefit of hindsight, Michael, is there any question that you wished you'd asked that you didn't ask as part of the due diligence process?
Good question. Nothing that I'm actually that's coming to mind at the moment that I hadn't asked. No,
that's good, because that means there's no horror story lurking in.
No, the information was all there, was given. I mean, as to being able to substantiate it all is questionable, but all the information was actually given. So
brilliant.
I don't think
Thank
there was
you.
anything else I could have asked.
Thank you. And Sarah, was there for you? Just as a no, you're shaking your head.
No.
So you was all good as well. So
Yeah.
Robert, the question then. So from your perspective, what sort of due diligence do you look for when you're buying a practice? And you must have a horror story in 13 practices.
It greatly depends on the deal structure. Right. Because I've done various different types of deal structures. So at one extreme, last October, I walked into a practice where it was only a small thing, £60,000 fees, one staff member. But the guy dropped dead, and he'd actually dropped dead in the offices. So the deal structure on that was, I'm giving you no money up front. I'm giving you absolutely nothing. I'll take over and run this, and from what I get, I will give you a percentage of. On the basis that I've therefore got no risk other than that potential staff member, but I'm keeping them in a separate company anyway. I actually did no due diligence at all. I just walked in and took over. And so far, touch wood, we've retained about 85% of that on that basis. If you're putting an awful lot of money up front to it, I'm going to clearly be more interested in terms of, I don't tend to look at the technical work in the files. I want to see you've got runoff cover, and if your actual technical work has been crap, then the insurance is going to have to deal with that. What I'm looking at is engagement letters, AML, history of payments, direct debits that are in place, what type of contracts have you had, how long have these customers sat there, age profile. I'm more interested in that side of things. But again, as I say, I stress it's very much deal dependent. It's very much how you do this. I have had some horror stories. One guy completely made up his files and completely made up everything was fiction. What I came to the conclusion of is that a lot of it had existed at one point, and he'd kind of updated it and changed dates on things and said it was still there. But then I had to sue him, and I got my money back. So hey ho.
There you go. Brilliant. Thank you. Not brilliant that you had to sue somebody, but brilliant answer. Thank you, Rob. And then Esther, from a selling perspective, how did you feel about the due diligence? I could imagine it'd be quite intrusive and potentially challenging, and perhaps a bit mistrusting from a But I don't know.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'm putting words in your mouth.
Well, all of those things, plus you feel really vulnerable. Like personally, I'd not worked in an accountancy practice. I'd worked in for a big umbrella company. So I'd worked with sort of the big five kind of thing. And then I went from corporate to set up my own business. And, all the way through, I had the tiger of, is this even how you do it? And you're opening yourself up and being really vulnerable to potential purchasers who might look at it and go, this is all a load of rubbish. Who wants this? So you have to get over that ego to begin with. And then, you have to give over records, and you have to trust that that person isn't then going to take those clients and go behind your back. And that was a big thing. But I think that comes back to using a broker to work out that the people are genuine and that they're serious. And the broker I worked with, the people he put me in touch with, he'd worked with them before as well. So that was useful. From a due diligence point of view, I took control of that, because I think if you're in control, then it makes you feel a lot less anxious. So I'd approached the meetings having done quite a lot of that information already. So I put together a pack that said, this is my age profile, this is my recurring fees, this is how many are on direct debit. So I'd sort of done some of that work up front at our initial meetings. And then when I had to dump it all in a shared spreadsheet, shared folder, it just sort of reinforced the information that I'd given them at those meetings.
Excellent. Thank you. So we got lots of questions coming through, most of them now about buying practices. So what I'm going to do is there's a couple more questions around the selling, and then I'm going to flip over onto the buying aspect, so you can go and have a little sleep, Esther, if that's well, we can always do your perspective on it. So one of the things, again, this was a bit of a reoccurring theme, was did you sell or buy on EBITDA or GRF? So are you looking to buy as a multiple of fee, or are you looking as a multiple of profit, or both, or a combination of the two? What's the driver? So, Rob, you're going to tell me it depends on the deal and all the rest of it, I should think.
I am, yeah, proper accountant, absolute proper accountant. Well, it depends, yeah. No, I'd go a little bit further than that. I have all my. When I sold to the National, it was done on EBITDA. Everything else is being on fees, turn a percentage of fees. Deals I have done on as an acquirer tend to be smaller. I've done nothing more than a couple of £100,000. I'm not doing multi-million-pound deals. Talking to brokers, it tends to be that once you hit $1 million plus, it tends to be EBITDA. Okay,
so the bigger deals are EBITDA and the lower multiples are GRF.
Yeah.
And just as a feel, Rob, obviously you don't need to mention any numbers, but there all sorts of numbers get banded about 0.5% or 0.8 and 1.5 or 1.3 in London. There's all sorts of numbers that get banded about. What as you're looking at it, what changes your opinion on what multiple of GRF you should be paying or the buyer should be receiving? Sorry, the seller should be receiving.
I outright, I put this on the forum, so I'm quite happy to talk about what I have paid for things. I have paid between 30p in the pound and £1.1. That's where so that that is a massive spread, and that does depend on what I'm buying to it. So the 30p in the pound one was pretty crummy. It was a pretty crummy practice, but there was some bits and bobs in there that you could pick out to it. What I'm looking for, age profile to it, type of clients, average fee, computerization of those clients, how sticky have they been historically, what their payment terms like. They're sort of the big ones that are immediately coming to my head. So if you've got really old clients that turn up once a year and bringing in a bin bag full of rubbish and your tax return fees are 50 quid, and I'll take it on. I'll take anything, but
that has less value than one that's on computers and all bank recs and all the rest of it. Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Michael, when you bought, what did you look for?
Yes, also GRF. I'm happy to say so. With the two, the one was at 0.8 in the pound, and the other one was 1.2. And like Robert said, it was based on the quality of the clients and the practice.
So and you're the same as Rob in that the better the quality of the practice, the higher the multiple that you was prepared to pay.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So I took, just to go off and talk about me, when we bought two practices, when I bought the first one, I took a slightly different opinion in that I knew that I was competing with people. And when I looked at the client base, the actual work that had been done, there was lots of opportunities. Let's just put it like that. So I knew that I could pay a higher multiple to win that work, and within 12 months I'd recovered what I'd paid. So I suppose depending on the strategy that you're going to employ and how much work potentially you want to do and how blah blah blah, all the other things that you've got going on in your life at the time, depends a little bit on where you want to go with that. So thank you. Sarah, what was your thoughts? Was you EBITDA or a GRF, and how did that happen?
It was GRF, but I worked out that it would take 2.5 years to repay. So it was, although I'd paid on revenue, I needed to make sure that we were clawing it back within my goal that I'd set myself was 3 years. So I needed it back in 3 years, which I think is pretty reasonable in any kind of market. We paid at the higher end, so we were paid 1.3. I think there's more on the market down south now. There wasn't at the time. There's seems to be a lot more for sale the further north you go. But I was also retaining staff and the owner. So the fee wasn't just about the revenue, it was about retaining the staff. The owner stayed and she's still with me now. She's brilliant. So she just didn't want to run a practice anymore. But she still sells. So yeah, it was a good overall business to buy. So although it was on revenue, to look at the whole business, the business as a whole.
Yeah. So you was GRF with an EBITDA sanity check, basically.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And then Esther, how did you have any decision in that process? How was that work?
Yeah, so mine was on fees. And in actual fact, the guys who I sold to on a lower multiple than other conversations I'd had. And I made the decision that actually they were a much better fit than trying to go for money. So for me, it was the money's important, and obviously I've got a plan with my own life, but it was really important that the clients were looked after and the team were looked after. And I'm still there, probably a little bit like Sarah, where I'm doing a couple of days a week working on some projects for them. So I wanted to go with people that I had a great relationship with. So obviously you want a payout, but the trying to go for the highest payout I could get wasn't that important.
Thank you. And that's a really interesting point. So you very often hear people band around 1.3 and 1.1 and all the rest of it, but very few people talk about the clawback and the amount of clawback that comes out of that. And just as you said, Esther, I think very often it's better to take, say, 0.9 with a lower clawback than 1.3 with a massive clawback, because they've whacked up the prices or whatever it is that they've done, and you end up with less money, even though you felt that you had a better deal to start with. So thank you, Esther. So I've got lots of questions in the bank. I'm just going to run down these questions, and then there's a couple of more things that I want to finish off, some of which I'm not going to ask you to answer, but I will explain as we go through. So Aftab has asked, what are the key factors your company considers when evaluating potential acquisition targets in our industry? Well, I think we've covered that. So you've talked about where we are with that. Sylvia has asked, is there a bullet point list of due diligence activities that could be completed in advance? Did one of you said that was on a website? I think that was Michael. Did you say that you'd got a due diligence checklist?
Yeah, that was me. That I am one of the brokers had a due diligence checklist on.
Are you happy to share that with me, Michael?
Yes,
website?
yeah,
brilliant.
So absolutely.
I know Sylvia. Sylvia's in. Well, you know Sylvia as well. So
okay,
yeah,
Sylvia, I know Sylvia. I'll share that with you later, Sylvia.
So I'll leave you two to talk to between each other. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and all the rest of it. Chitten's asked, nowadays, buying a practice is very competitive, and there are more buyers than sellers. Being an experienced accountant, do you not prefer to develop internally via good marketing rather than paying money for buying? Views are highly appreciated. And this is a question that we had in the bank as well. So what drove you, Rob, Sarah and Michael in particular, what drove you to buy or acquire fees rather than organically market?
Considering I've done loads of it, can I start? Just give my tuppence worth on this.
Yeah.
I find it easier, cheaper and quicker.
Easier, cheaper and quicker. So even though you're potentially paying 1.3, you think that is quicker, cheaper than
because I don't have to run round. If I buy a firm up, I've got a block of fees that I can start looking after immediately and earning money from. Whereas if I undertake marketing, and bear in mind the first firm I sold out to the National was built entirely on marketing. There was no acquisitions in that, and I went from 0 to 3 million quid in a couple of years, just purely on marketing to it. But I ran around like a headless chicken, chasing every opening of every envelope everywhere, going, "Hello, my name's Rob, sign up." And if you take all that into it, it's just easier, cheaper, and quicker.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Michael?
So I started from scratch, and I'd been in industry for 20 years and then went back into practice. So I just felt that it was easier to get that initial client base with initially to then start working on. Then with the second practice, which was bigger, there were credible staff that came with that, so that was great to actually get the staff there, and then also the credibility. When I was a sole practitioner and just me, I did have one client that signed up, and a month later they said, "Oh, we made a mistake. We hadn't realised that it was just you, and so if something happens to you, we're going to be vulnerable. We don't have a problem with you, but it's just you don't actually have the backup." So buying a practice does give you that credibility, and you can then escalate with it. And there's lots of upsell opportunities with the clients that you take on board.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you. And Sarah?
For me, it was the quickest way to get to the 500,000 mark. So there seems to be a kind of a period between, I don't know, 150 to like 350, 400, where you're not making huge amounts of money because you're needing to grow, you're needing to staff up, and you're trying to get yourself out of the business, but you can't really get yourself out of the business. So it was leapfrogging that. So we were just short of about £250,000, and we bought a practice that was about £160,000 of fees. So it was, and there was so much potential in it as well. So it was just to leapfrog up with the staff that came with it to try and get me out of the business quicker. Although a lot of hard work happened in that process. But that was the main reason for doing it.
Excellent. Thank you. So quicker growth, and it feels easier in a way to acquire. But excellent. Thank you. So I've got lots of other questions, so let me just do that one now. We've got lots of questions, so everybody is being very cagey about names of brokers. How did you go to a broker? Can I ask which broker you used? How did you know what due diligence to use? Did the broker advise? So there's lots of questions about the brokers. Now, you can obviously say I'm not prepared to disclose who I use, but rather than moan about the bad ones that you've perhaps experienced, is anybody willing to put a name or share who it was that they used? Yeah, go on then, Rob.
One still is in business, and well, no, I'm actually going to start with the best broker I ever met has actually passed away, and he's no longer there. So I'm going to shout out for Julian Hamilton of JobTel, because he was an amazing man, had been around accountancy for many years, and I owe a lot to Julian. The guy that I use a lot now, and I get a lot of value from, is Kevin Smith at Vivian Schramm.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I bought through Kevin at Vivian Schramm as well. The first broker was WJP Brokerage, I think, and he was a good guy as well. But yeah, Vivian Schramm, and they tend to have a list of firms for sale on their website as well. Although if you get on the lists, and you'll get advance warning before they tend to go on that list as well.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I was going to say, can I just pick up on something to do with that? That I think the more you deal with a particular broker, and the more that broker gets to know you, the more likely you are to be successful in the deals, because they will have some insight into your personality, and will therefore be prepared to go, "Oh, here's Fred. He actually might work for you."
Yeah, it's the same. Relationships, I suppose, it's the same with anything. The stronger the relationship and the more firm the relationship, the more likely you are to win those deals. Excellent, brilliant. So Kevin's got two shout-outs there. Michael or Esther, do you want to? Are you comfortable where you are?
Yeah. So mine, in addition to that, was Retiring Accountant, was one of the other ones I've used.
Right.
And then the one with the checklist, but I'm still happy to do it to you, Sylvia, was Draper Hinks. Sorry, I wasn't too sure whether we were disclosing names of brokers, but Draper Hinks is another one. I've not used them, but I got their checklist from them.
Thank you. And I've used Nicola twice, and
Right.
I like Nicola at Draper Hinks, so I would back her as well. Brilliant, excellent, thank you. So they're the broker questions. Let me just, is it possible? So answer line, we'll delete that. That one's done. That one's done. Did you sell shares or goodwill, Esther and Rob, when you sold?
I sold shares.
You sold the shares, and Rob,
Yeah.
did you?
Goodwill both times. There's no way National's buying the shares, and yeah.
So, all right, okay. So at that level of fees, the Nationals are looking to buy the goodwill out of the assets.
Well,
rather
certainly
than...
when I did it in 2007, yes.
Right.
I'm not talking to Nationals at the moment, so I don't know how they're organising it, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ed, did you know the due diligence to do? The broker, we've answered that one. Ahmed, did you? Here's a good one. So, did you stick to practices that were close to you? So, this is from a buying perspective. Did you stick to practices that was close to you in location, or did you go further afield? Go on, Sarah. You're on mute, Sarah. Sorry.
Mine was actually the one I did buy was actually in the same village, so you could walk between the offices between 5 minutes. And they have a lot of local business, and it was intentional that it was local. The first one was just in the next town. It was like 15-minute drive, not even that. So yeah, it was local.
Excellent, thank you. And Michael?
Mine were both within half an hour from where I was living, although the office has now moved in 15 minutes, so perfect.
Excellent, thank you. And then Rob, are you?
Again, my great accountant answer, it depends on the deal.
Right.
If you give it to me for free, I'll take it anywhere. If I'm having to pay for it, it might be slightly different. I think you're better off buying something relatively close, certainly within a geographic patch to it. But if anyone goes on my website, they'll see some outlying offices and think, how the hell are they there? And it's because basically someone said, here, have this. So.
Excellent, thank you. And then Esther, did you sell locally or did you go?
No, I didn't actually. Well, they're around the M25, so they're the other side of London. And actually, I think that's probably part of the reason I'm still there, because just making sure that the team are okay and the team are settled, and they have a really good plan for it. But yeah, but it's still working, even though they're not necessarily 5 minutes up the road.
Thank you. And then Carol Pesh has asked, any key things to include in the heads of terms in the contract? So when you're drawing up the contract, when you're buying or selling, I suppose, what sort of what are the key things? Go on, Robert. I know you're desperate to get in on that one. Go on.
I am and I'm not. Truthfully, Simon, this is a 2-hour webinar in itself, as to what to put in and out and how to deal structure. I can tell you something to watch out for. Let's put it that way around. The bastard nightmare clause from hell got put into mine from the National, which is they had the right. Nobody, even my lawyer, didn't understand this until they actually used it. They had the right to charge me for any goodwill any whip they didn't recover.
Blimey.
Yeah, so it kind of went at one point, this thing, it was like, hello, we owe you £3 million, but you owe us 5 million. So if you could just write us a check for the difference, we'll all will be good. And as I say, until that literally happened, not even the lawyer understood what had actually been put into it. And, that took quite some getting over. So what would I say? You want it clearly set out on what basis you're going to do this deal. Yeah. You want it clearly. I think there's a lot of arguments in the early days when I started doing. There's a lot of arguments always around: is it whip based? Is it invoiced based? Is it whatever? So I make it very clear that this is cash received based. So I'll pay you X times fees of the cash that I have received from this period to that period. I think, and I say that's. You don't have to do it on cash, but you need to make it very, very clear what it is, and then defining those terms to it. You each point of those, think it through from the other side and just make it clear is what I'd say. But this is a whole subject in itself, this bit.
Yeah, I think whenever I talk to somebody, the three keys are obviously the price you're paying, the clawback, and when you're paying it, and what happens if you don't get what you think you're getting. So what does it come out the blah blah blah? Come out the clawback? Well, like you say, there's a whole day, and there is a video on the YouTube channel, and I can't remember the solicitor's name. The video is entitled "Buying Dead Clients." And that's how he always starts off the conversation with somebody that's buying a practice, is to make sure that you're not buying any dead clients. So that I can't, Mark might be able to go off and find that on the YouTube channel. It's Ian Worthington, I think the chap's name was. So there's lots of stuff in there, Kalpesh, about that. Size of practices, Ian, generally speaking, there was 100 to 300, 400,000 type stuff, which we talked about earlier. Carolyn Rob has talked about his ideal purchase. Chetan said the general perception is when you buy a practice, you put 1/3 up. So payment terms is an interesting one. So what have you generally found? If you're happy to talk about it, I know lots of people talk about third, or 50, 25, 25. So if you're comfortable sharing it, and I won't pick on anybody's names in case you're not, but what your payment terms?
Yeah, happy to do that. So I was 50 and then 25 a year later and 25 a year after for the large one. The smaller one was 50 and then 50 a year later.
So it's 50 and 50 for the second one. Sorry, Michael, you broke up for the first one.
That's
what was
right.
the first one?
Oh, did I? Yeah. So the first one was 50 and then 25 a year later and then 25 a year after that.
Excellent, thank you.
And the first one, the small one was 50 and then 50 a year later.
And then 50. Thank you. Rob, you're going to say it depends.
On deal structure, because you can use the payment terms. Let's say you're in it, you've got a few people chasing this deal and you really want it, and there's a few of you there, and there's a few of you, and you really, really want this deal. Well, why not go monthly and pay it monthly? Because they won't be doing that. So I will give you at the end, 28 days after the end of every month, I will give you X% of the money that I have collected from your clients in the previous month. Now, isn't that a sexy thing to offer in a contract, to suddenly get the contract across? Yeah. And it's not actually cost you anything because it's based on the cash that you've recovered.
Yeah.
It makes it you suddenly now become the number one person in that deal without it not actually costing you anything. Typically, I would say thirds, but there's loads of potentials around that. Again, when I start negotiating with you, yeah, I'll give you £1 now, and in 10 years, I might maybe consider giving you some more money. But yeah.
Away you go. It's definitely brilliant. Thank you, Rob. Sarah, did you?
We did 50% upfront and then 25 and 25, and it was shorter actually. It was after about 9 or 10 months, and then the last one was, I think it was about 16 months. So it was within 18 months. Now, I don't think I would have done that if she hadn't been staying on. Right. So I think that was a key decision, and we did have clawback, and the clawback came off the last one, but the provision in the contracts was that clawback could come off any. And I remember somebody telling me that they'd bought and they had a problem that their contract wasn't worded that they could not pay over if the clawback was greater than like the last payment. Right. So they could claw it off the second payment. So yeah, be aware of that.
Yeah, so they had a situation where they could only deduct it from the last payment, and the clawback was higher than the last payment, so they lost the ability.
Yeah,
I heard somebody else have a conversation about that as well. So, brilliant, thank you. And then mergers. Is a merger ever a merger? Esther, can you? Sorry, was you going to share your payment?
I was just going to say, just a slightly different take. Mine's 40, 30, 30, but I've negotiated a claw forward. So if it grows, because I'm still involved, if the business grows, the final payment is going to be increased.
So on that similar subject, so we had a clawback, but we had it on the pool of revenue, and we isolated all the revenue from those customers. So we did actually gain out of those customers, and it was the net difference that was the clawback. So similar, but not a positive amount in the end, but it was a netting off.
Excellent, thank you. And then the merger thing, I don't know whether, because you're actually on the way out, Esther, aren't you? But Sarah, yours was would you describe it as a merger, or was it an acquisition?
It was an acquisition because it was like hands off. I just want to do client work, and that's it.
You want to do it. And Rob, have you ever merged?
Yeah, I have. My tax partner, Fiona, shout out if she ever does actually watch this. She's ace. She's brilliant. Fee was a sole practitioner, hated being sole practitioner, and I'd known her for years, and we kind of merged, and she ended up with whatever percentage it is of the total firm, and she loves it being a partner as opposed to having to be a sole prac.
Excellent. So a merger can be a merger then, is so stereotypically I always think, well, so there's going to be somebody in charge, and therefore it's
Well, I'm
like
in charge.
yeah, of course. Brilliant. Thank you. Caroline says, what makes the quality? We've talked about that one, Caroline. Jazz says, agent fees. This is really interesting. This messes with my head when I first came across it. But agent fees, who pays? It seems always as though it's the buyer that pays. I've never has anybody come across a situation where the seller pays? I've never come across one. No, so it's always the buyer, Jazz. And do we know why? Why it's the buyer that's paying rather than the seller? Because it seemed pretty unique.
Because there's loads of buyers. Because as someone touched on before, there's more buyers than sellers. They can get away with it that way around.
Right, so it's just market demand basically. So it's kind of a bit of a way of sneaking in an extra penny in the pound or 2p in the pound in order to get it across. Excellent. So that's that, Jazz. Clawback. Jazz again, clawback. How long have you taken this as a period, and how's it structured? So I know Rob's going to say it depends, but Sarah, let's let's go. So if you don't mind sharing, how long was the clawback period?
I think it was 18 months. Well, it was to the last payment basically.
Yep.
So it would have been like 16 months, but we needed to cover a 12-month period. It was slightly easier in the fact that the practice I bought did annual billing. Right. And there wasn't monthly. I found it really quite difficult to structure monthly billing, which was the first one I was trying to buy, and to figure out clawback on that. But yeah, this one we just literally kept a list of clients, and there was about 10 clients that left for not any reason to do with buying the practice. They just left. And then we kept a list of ones that grew. So it was just kept on a spreadsheet. That was it.
Thank you. And Michael, when you bought yours, how did you structure that, if you don't mind sharing?
Yes, so it was so the practice was acquired in December, and obviously with it being the busy time of the year, so what we actually agreed is we'd do it for 13 or 14 months. So it was to the February, so the December to the following February. So at least there was guaranteed one cycle of everyone that would be invoiced, because it was also annual invoicing. And so it was the 14 months of that every client was invoiced based on
thank
they
you.
Invoiced.
Thank you. And then from a seller's perspective, Esther, if you can share?
Yeah, so the clawback goes for 2 years, which is how the payment terms. So like Sarah said, it's on the final payment. So if there's any clawback, it'll come off there, but if there's any claw forward, it goes on there.
Excellent. Thank you. So that's knocked that one. Financing of purchases. Again, if you don't mind sharing, Rob, how do you finance yours?
I do them from internal cash. I don't borrow any money. Vivian Schramm have a list of potential lenders on their website. If you go to their website, they've got about 10 or 15 people that'll do it. And again, in the last couple of years with coronavirus loans and what all the other things is, I know you've been able to use those as well, but I never borrow any money.
Excellent. Thank you. Have you, Sarah and Michael, did you borrow any money, or was it internally financed? How did it work, Michael?
Yes, I borrowed, and yeah, it was as Robert said, it was a practice loan company. So I think they specialise in dentists, accountants, lawyers, such like.
Thank you. And Sarah?
It was internal financed. I didn't borrow.
And away you went. So when I bought mine was the local bank manager. Remarkably enough, it's like apparently I was a PSC, a person of significant influence, and therefore he could lend me
in
money.
About 1820.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm 50. I was 50 a couple of months ago. In case you didn't notice. Anyway, that's that. Practice bank statement audit. Nobody has mentioned practice bank statement audit. Nobody has mentioned this. Jazz, can you just you have to enlighten me on what that question is. I don't know what a practice bank statement audit is.
If they mean, do you just go through the bank statements? Yes, I do.
You do go through and check the numbers. With clawback, have you ever been challenged if a client left and it wasn't your fault? So it wasn't the seller's fault, i.e. they're a bad leaver or there avoids any clawback. So for argument's sake, me as the acquirer, I buy your practice and I whack all the prices up and therefore everybody leaves. Is there any description of what a bad leaver is or a good leaver?
Well, I would have that in the contract that you can't put the prices up more than X% anyway.
Yeah.
If on it. As I said to you, when I sold to a national, they started on me about their unrecovered WIP. I've had that, but I don't know if that's kind of the same thing.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, whenever I've bought, that's one of my selling points. When I've bought, I put that in that I'm not going to increase the prices for 2 years or whatever it is in order to give them the surety. But other than that, if they leave, they leave. Yeah, everybody's not in the
We
head.
had a clause in our contract which said, apart from no price increases other than inflation, we also said that we would make available email correspondence or any correspondence received from the client if there was a dispute on why they're leaving. It's still arguable because they probably won't tell you why they're leaving, but that's what we had in there.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. When you are a franchisor of some well-known companies, does it make any difference in buying a practice as it's always sold internally amongst other members? I think I know what you're talking about, Chino. I've got a little bit of experience of that. And the simple answer is yes, it does. Because ultimately you're selling to a restricted market and the systems and all the other stuff. So it's almost a market within it's a market within a market on that, cheating. But I'll glance at that specifically if you would like me to. I've also deals on monthly payments with better percentages on longer payment periods, also with one up front and a third and then monthly payments. So that was your suggestion, Robert. So
It was probably me that said that on a forum somewhere.
Yeah.
But I've done deals on that basis where I've done, the largest one I bought was 350 and I did it over 5 years with monthly payments, no upfront.
Yeah. So that's how that works. When I bought Greenstones, I bought it over a period of longer than 3 years as well. So Jazz has then asked, what's the longest period you have structured a deal, i.e. 1, 2 or 3 years? So your longest was 5 years, Rob, is that? Yeah. Did Sarah and Michael, I think you said 2 years, and Esther, you said 2 years as well. Yeah, 2 years as well. So that answers that question. What percentage would you pay if on a monthly drip? Again, that's so dependent, Ahmed, on all the different variables of all the different things and location and all the rest of it. So that's the negotiation. Carolyn's asked an interesting question. How long, if at all, did the seller or the buyers stick around for? So in your case, Esther, how long are you staying around for?
So it was put in the contract that I would be available for 3 days a week for the first 6 months. And 2 days a week for the next 6 months, and then we would negotiate if I wanted to stay or if they needed me. I'm still doing 3 days a week. We're about 8 months in, but that suits me, suits them. I'm on a consultancy basis, and I'm not doing any client work. I'm just helping them with some projects, and it's working really nicely.
Brilliant. So you're guaranteed for a year, but it could be 2 years, basically.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then Michael, when you took over, how long did the seller stick around for?
So the first one was for a year, and then we sort of agreed a certain amount of time at the start for the handover, and then ad hoc sort of consultancy basis. The second one was supposed to, but didn't. Haven't seen him since.
What was that? Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
The second one was supposed to be around, and he didn't, and haven't seen him since.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, yours is still working with you, so
Yeah, permanent contract. So
forever and a day potentially. And then Rob, no doubt you've had all sorts of different combinations.
Yep. On the whole, the contract actually says 100 hours of handover time, and I include that in the purchase price. I'm not paying you for it. But again, I've had them where the 100 hours became 20 minutes, and I never saw them again. Through to Fiona, who works with me every day.
Yeah, so there's a whole world. I'm in the camp that I want to get rid of them as quickly as possible.
Broadly, yes, I'd agree with you, Simon. Broadly, my overall would be get rid of them as quickly as possible. Overall,
that's the control freak aspect of Simon coming out. So that's answered that question. Agent fees. What's fair? So can you give us a broad brush on is it a percentage of fees? Is it a block fee? What sort of thing? Go on, Rob. You got your mic off.
Kevin might hate me for saying this, but he tends to charge 5%. So okay. That tends to be what I pay.
Okay. Any others? Are we happy to share? You're nodding your head, Michael. That's the same sort of figure, is it? Yeah, and same with Sarah. That gives you an idea. And then Sylvia, buyers, do you prefer the existing owner to stay, which we have just answered? So that's gone through all of the questions that have been through the chat box. It just leaves with 5 minutes, and I'm going to very much respect your time with regards to you finishing at 10:30, because I'm massively grateful, as is the community, for you giving up your time this morning to share your experiences. So just to finish off, is the one thing that you have learnt or discovered having been through the process, either from a buyer or seller thing, that you was completely surprised by? So before you started it, was there something that came up, or is there something that you should somebody that's watching this video or watching the webinar, they should know about before they start either buying or selling the practice?
Can I actually say, as a buyer, what I would do?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, sorry,
If I
Esther,
was
go on,
selling
Rob.
again, what I would do? If I was selling again, I would say I would take the lowest multiple I could get for the shortest time payment. So if you turn around and said to me, I'll give you 60p on the pound, but here's all the money right now, beggar off and never darken the door again, I'd take that.
Yeah, so the surety of the cash in the bank is better than the long trial and all the arguments and the legal conversations. I'm going to say a different word then that goes around it. Brilliant, excellent, Rob. Thank you. And Esther?
I was going to say, from a seller's perspective, start the process before you need to start the process. So funnily enough, I was in your mastermind, Simon, and I had a conversation with Mark a few years ago. By the time I'm 50, I want to have sold it. So sort of, I started the wheels in motion back then. I'd recommend anybody get like an MOT of their business if they're thinking of selling. So somebody external, whether it's a mastermind group or another individual, to have a look at your business and help you work out what you need to improve and what your strengths are, and then accept that you need to commit to this if you want it to work for you and for your purchaser and for your employees and for your clients. You need to really be involved and present. So if you start that earlier, you don't end up with a resentment like, I should have been gone by now. Do you know what I mean?
I do, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Sarah?
Sorry, I couldn't get it off there. I think just be prepared for a lot of hard work in the first few months of buying, admin wise. So try not to do any client work yourself if you normally are within the first 2 to 3 months, because you need to get to know some of the clients. You need to get them all over to, even though we did a share purchase, we, started the process of new letters of engagement. Looked at all the pricing, so a lot of them were on hourly or just annual prices, so I had to then convert those over to fixed pricing. There was a lot of admin, so have a process written, and we actually did a kind of handover job in Carbon. So we ticked through exactly what we'd done, and we set that up for each client so that we knew we'd followed the process. So there's a lot of process admin stuff in those first few months following. So just be prepared for it.
Thank you. And Michael?
My one thing that we haven't sort of discussed, I think might be useful for anyone considering, is bad debts. So I had a clause that if a client, because the clients were annually billed, if they hadn't paid within 3 months, it then actually reverted to the seller to actually collect the fees, and if after 6 months it then sort of fell off the GRF. So obviously if they go, if you've done the work and then they go under, or for whatever reason, so at least you're sort of covered from that point of view.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. And that's just bang on time, well, almost bang on time. So I'm going to say a few things now, obviously, and then I will be bang on time. So there are already lots of things coming through on the chat, lots of thank yous. Jazz said brilliant, thank you guys. Mel said absolutely brilliant. Natalie said thank you so much, it's really helpful. Ahmed, great session. Etc. And it was really, really good, despite, I'm gonna say that, because that's just, it's like how can it be anything else when we are involved? But I'll just let us say a massive thank you to Esther, Rob, Michael and Sarah for coming along today, and for sharing your time, giving up your time, volunteering your time in order to help the community. It's absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to do the round of applause. And there's loads of them coming through there. Jeff is a thank you. Sylvia, great session. Chitin, thanks. Have a wonderful day, etc., etc. We'll send those through. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much. Thank you very much to everybody coming along and for answering the questions. And we will see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching this webinar with Rob, Michael, Sarah, and Esther. I am sure you have found it of massive value. As always, if you have any comments or questions, please post them below this video and we will gladly answer them. Hit like to make sure that this video gets seen by more people, and also subscribe to the channel so you get notified the next time that we upload a video to inspire, challenge, and support you to be the very best that you want to be. On the screen now, somewhere around me, you should see our suggested videos for what you watch next.